coach or a scrum master, we have to call out our friends here. And maybe you are currently dealing with some frustrations, whether it is trying to motivate your team, whether it's constant change in direction and you need guidance on how to navigate that. Well, maybe you're not a scrum master or an agile coach, although I just saw someone who plop, agile consultant. Maybe you are in another role, and it doesn't matter, because I truly believe that the best way to motivate people is to act as a coach rather than someone who constantly manages people. Obviously, there are many different stances that you can take on, but one of them is a coach, and it can be extremely effective and empowering for your team when you take that stance. So let us know in the chat. Yay, Grace, Robert, nice seeing you. Wonderful. Okay, so we're going to get started, just warming people up here. This is an episode as part of my podcast, the Career Transition Podcast. And in the first few seasons, I focused on talking about stories from my own, community to help you navigate your career transition. But today we're doing something different. I'm bringing on a special guest. Actually, he is special because I was one of his students and I took one of his classes when it comes to coaching. This is Damon Poole, and he wrote an amazing book that I constantly recommend to all of my clients. It is called The Professional Coaching for Agilists, Accelerating Agile Adoption. And let me tell you something. This is not just for Agilists. This is an amazing book if you want to really, really understand coaching and improve your coaching competency. So I just posted a link in the chat so that you can all check it out later on. But I'm going to just pass the mic to you, Damon, and I will let you introduce yourself and maybe start with what made you to decide to get into this space and become a coach of coaches.
I don't know if I decided. I think, sometimes things get decided for us. But I like to put a positive spin on it. I like to call it serendipity. It's a nicer, sounding word, serendipity. It sounds so cool. I've definitely relied on serendipity a lot in my life. Life brings us a lot of choices. And then, it's kind of like, I do want to do that. I don't want to do that. Sometimes it's just, to keep going. There's just the one path. But long story short, I was born as a programmer, pretty close to that. And then I got into doing things like product ownership, product management, CTO kind of stuff. And then from that, I started to get deeper into Agile. And that was not really a choice, actually. The company I was at the time was in trouble, and Agile was the cause of it. So I had to sort of figure out what was going on with that. And in getting into that, I realized, actually, I like Agile more than what I'm doing at this company. And it went further into Agile and training. And then it was really Lisa's book that came along, Lisa Adkins' book. And if anybody hasn't read that, that's a fantastic book. And just like you were saying with my book, thank you. It's not necessarily just for Agilists. It could be useful for anybody. But that sort of got me to think, expertise is great. Knowledge is great. But if I'm an expert in something and the person I'm coaching is not, just because I would have them do something doesn't mean that they're comfortable doing it or really understand how to do it. So the question is, how can I help them find something that will work for them, which could mean learning more, or it could be accepting that they're not going to do it the way that I would do it, which can be very hard. So Lisa's book was really eye-opening, and I just have kept, moving down the path to finally get into professional coaching, which is pure coaching, and it's not necessarily just Agile. And as you said, the book, while it says for Agilists, could be used by just about anybody. And in fact, in my coaching programs, I have two. One is called Advanced Agile Coaching, and then the other is called Professional Coaching for Technologists. So I probably am best working with technology people, but it doesn't have to be Agilists. So that's sort of in a, I guess, a largish nutshell there.
Wow, that's an interesting story, and definitely in alignment with what a lot of people go through when they're transitioning their career. You didn't just wake up one day and definitively decided, I want to get into this.
No, it's sort of one day I woke up and realized, oh, I'm doing it.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's what I love coaching people on, is that, don't like try to perfect your next career move. Look at what's in front of you, take advantage of it, and build upon the resources that you have available. That's amazing. So I think what a lot of people struggle with when it comes to coaching is actually understanding what coaching means. And I love how you break it down.
Oh,
Some
I
people
do.
get
Oh, I want to hear
confused
this.
about it. What is coaching, Damon? I think a lot of people struggle with understanding what coaching is. I'd love to hear your definition, your perspective.
Oh, I thought we were going to hear your take on my definition. I was thinking that. Sure. It's really hard. And one of the things that I like to say in the ICP-ACC course is I have a 21-hour answer for that.
Wow.
Yeah, right. It's the sort of thing that sort of creeps up on you. It's hard to just put it out there and have people go, oh, I get that exactly. It's really hard. And one of the things that I found is doing a demonstration. I'm not suggesting we do a demonstration today, but doing a demonstration can be really eye-opening. I remember, for instance, going back to Lisa again, she did a demonstration in front of a whole bunch of people at one of the Agile Alliance conferences. And afterwards, she asked for, thoughts. And one person said, I always thought I was doing coaching. Now I realize I was doing mentoring.
Wow.
And mentoring is awesome. But it sort of opens up the question, and I'm not really answering it entirely. I'm sort of saying what it's not, but sort of opens up the question of what is it? And so I do like to sort of partition it and say, not this, not this, not this, not from a bad perspective. I think sometimes people hear it as all these other things that are not coaching means it's a bad thing. And it's confusing, especially for Agile coaches, because Agile coach, it sounds like everything we're doing in that role is coaching, but it's not, and it's not bad. So as a quick analogy, in your car, most people, I'm sure you as well, will do both left and right turns. I know there are some people that you wonder, do they ever turn both ways? But you need to turn both ways. And it's the same thing with coaching. Coaching alone, isn't really going to do anything. It's useful, but you need other things as an Agile coach. You need the Agile part as well. So what it's not, sharing information is sharing expertise, right? So rather than call it mentoring or teaching, I'm just going to call it sharing expertise, because teaching is also sharing expertise. So here are the things that are sharing expertise, which are not coaching, but you need them, right? If you're a coach and somebody needs to know Kanban and you don't know it and they need it, pure coaching is not going to be useful to them. Anyway, so sharing any kind of information, expertise, any kind of suggestions, it's all expertise, which is great. Then there are some things that you wouldn't expect. Feedback is actually expertise. It's not coaching. There are some aspects of coaching and feedback, but if you're giving feedback to somebody like about the stand-up or the retrospective, it's because in your expert opinion, there's something that they need to learn. Change of expectations, something that will help them. It could be foundational knowledge. It could be something that's more mentoring, something that you would need when you're, further along in your role as a product owner, scrum master, or Agile developer, what have you. Then there's a very unexpected influence. You think, oh, well, influencing is coaching, but it's not actually, because when you're influencing somebody, you're influencing them in a direction based on your expert opinion.
And your ulterior motive too.
Well, yeah, ulterior is such a big word. As an Agile coach, you do absolutely have an express ulterior motive. And I know
Yeah.
not everybody here is an Agile coach. I get that. And this isn't just for Agile coaches. Any place that you're seen as an expert, you can bring coaching, and we still need to distinguish between between expertise and coaching. But the ulterior motive with Agile coaches is to help people become more agile. Even there, though, we don't want to force people, right? When we're not around, you know what people do when we're not around? Whatever the hell they want to do, right? They just
Exactly. It's like telling your kids, I want you to go and turn off the TV and go to bed. I want you to do that. They're not going to listen if you say it that way, right? Or if you tell them what to do, they're not going to listen. And that's often why when Scrum Masters or Agile coaches talk about, yeah, but the team never listens to me, well, that's because you're telling them what to do. And in this day and age where it's no longer in the old days where people just come in, do the job, abide by a set of rules. We have evolved as a society where we all have different opinions and different perspectives. And we want to feel like our opinions and perspectives are taken into account.
Absolutely. Whereas before, for instance, I could tell somebody, here's who you should marry, here's the car you should buy, the house. Wait, no? But there was something, right? It's we were sort of used to it at work, but I don't know that most people actually wanted to. It's just that was kind of the choice in front of us. And thankfully, things are absolutely changing. So one more thing that's kind of a surprise is problem solving. And I know it's, that's actually, it may sound like an obvious thing, but there's some subtlety there. Probably most of the people on this call are here because they're attracted to what we're talking about. And very often the kinds of people that it attracts are people that are really good at problem solving. But here's the catch. Problem solving, even if you're not suggesting solutions, if you're problem solving, like, oh, what might be the pros and cons here? That's a problem solving technique, and that's expertise too. So when we suggest to somebody, let's do pros and cons, we're actually moving outside of coaching into experting. And that can be a real surprise for people. Coaching is, yes, helping somebody solve a problem, but using their way of solving the problem. And that's actually really hard to do. We can leverage our problem solving skills. That's fine. But just be aware that when we say something as innocent sounding as what might be the pros and cons, we don't know. It's open-ended and it's powerful, but it's a problem solving thing that we chose for them.
Wow, that's very powerful. That is very powerful when you help people get that clarity on their own rather than spoon feed them. And I think this is why a lot of people are attracted to coaching, because of that transformational effect. So a lot of my clients who work with me often share how sometimes they're thrown into situations where they're somewhere in the middle. And I think I kind of talked about that in one of my posts, where it's the team versus leadership. What is your advice on how people can navigate that when they're in a position of basically creating a favorable output, right, for the organization, but they're sort of restricted and they have to influence without authority? What is your advice? Is this a situation where coaching can be handy? Is it a combination of different things? If you were coaching someone, oh my God, I said that word, in that scenario, how would you coach them on that?
So I think I picked up the concepts there, but what would be like an example of that concept?
Okay, I'm going to give you a real life example. So on one of my projects, I felt that my development team was just overloaded. And I was constantly getting feedback where, oh my goodness, the leadership team wants a quick win. They want us to build this prototype in 6 weeks. It's not going to happen. and we feel that we're just going to have to come up with something that sucks.
So do you have any other questions?
No, that's it.
It's just like, do you have a simpler one?
That's it. We're doing like a real life simulation here.
No, I know. I'm kidding. It's like, you go to Jeopardy and you're looking for $100 question and you get the $1,000 question. Ooh. Oh, that's awesome. Well, there's a lot of different aspects in there. I heard all kinds of things when you were talking about that. And one, I have sort of a pet one in there that I'm just going to get out of the way. And I don't know that it's going to be purely on the coaching side. Let me see how I can sort of focus on the coaching side. So to me, when somebody in leadership is asking for something that they think is a certain amount of time, and the person that they're asking knows or finds that it's more time, that's a classic, right? That happens all the time, whether it's through estimation or pressure. You had a specific example with the 6-week thing and the prototype, but that happens all the time. And, just leaving aside the coaching for a moment, just sort of the underlying thing, to me, what that gets down to is the person either feels like that group needs to be pushed because otherwise they wouldn't go fast enough or work hard enough or smart enough or whatever the word is that they would use, that they feel that that group generally lies about how long things take.
Interesting.
Or the third one, they don't care, right? And you know what? It's 6 weeks, and you're looking at it as you have 6 weeks of 40 hours each. I'm looking at it as, there's 80 hours you could put in every week because I need that, right? So there's to me, the underlying thing is, does that person understand that they might be saying one of those 3 things? And if that person understands that they may be saying one of those 3 things and they don't care, well, I don't know what you can do with that person, because that's like a jerk, right? That person's a jerk, right? I don't know how to help you with that one. Good luck, right?
We're not going to sugarcoat things, everyone. If you're in a situation where you're dealing with leadership teams or anyone really who pushes you and doesn't care, then they are jerks.
and not to go back into it, because I think we all spent a lot of time on your post looking at that text over and over again. I think we saw an example there, right? That was an example. Yeah. So that's kind of the underlying thing. But the flip side of it, which is wonderful, is I know that when I've had this conversation with people in the past and sort of made them aware of this, I remember the first time it happened, and I felt very awkward doing it. It was a long time ago, and I brought it up to the person gently, and the person was a new manager, and he goes, "I never thought of it that way. Oh my God, what have I been doing?"
Oh my goodness.
Right? So he had that awareness. When somebody with good intent, gains awareness, it can change them. The jerk, it was pretty clear. Oh yes, I have now validated that you are in fact a jerk. Good to know. Because when we know something like that, we can make a choice. Like, is that person's jerkiness worth it for me for whatever reason, or no? Like in your case, the answer was, well, no. Right? So how do we get it back to coaching, though? So I think that person that realized and said, oh, they had a blind spot. They hadn't had an opportunity to look at that. And a big part of coaching is just helping, being a mirror, like, here, this is you. Not in a, here, this is you. But
look how ugly you are. No.
Yeah. But
look what a jerk you are.
Yeah, right. Not suggesting that. I mean, if it works, whatever, get back to us, but I wouldn't recommend it. But helping people see themselves. So, I don't want to, spend too much time on that, but finding a way to help that person gain awareness. So it might be something like, okay, so you're looking for this to be done in 6 weeks. And I'm curious, in the past, how has that worked for you? Or, what might be some other perspectives here? Right. So it can sound a little leading, it can sound a little passive aggressive, like, "Oh, why don't you just tell them?" But that's not what I'm saying. That's um, as people work with you and they get to know you, they realize that's not what you're doing. You don't actually know what the answer to these questions are, right? So what might be some other perspectives on that gets the person thinking, oh yeah, oh that's right, there's the team, and maybe I should ask them, or whatever it is. Just helping the person see that there are other perspectives is a big part of coaching. Not necessarily it coming from us. We might get a sense that there are multiple perspectives, but we're not in their shoes. We don't know all the circumstances, but they are in their shoes and they do know the circumstances. So can we help them find more perspective? So that's a few thoughts. And I'm curious, can we get a post on jerk? I
I
just
know, it's hilarious. And I see jerk chicken too. Someone's
I'm
hungry.
I'm curious if there's any uh, pushback or alternative thoughts on what we've been talking about from the comments. That's always interesting to follow up on and see if we may have missed something.
Yeah, I'm hearing not necessarily pushback. I think a lot of people are resonating with this,
Yeah.
because I do believe that even in my situation, I frankly feel being someone who coaches people now in this position, and having grown from that experience, that I could have handled it a little bit differently. I could have been a little bit more
Oh,
patient with the person. And when you talk about the awareness aspect, I'm not sure if they were fully aware that they were not intentionally being a jerk, and they were not fully
oh,
aware as to how the impact of these behaviors, right? And I think what you just said about creating that awareness for the person as step number one, through empathy and through mirroring, that's something that people often skip over and automatically assume that the person is trying to, get them. And I think that is definitely a great tool that we can add to our toolkit when we're
mm,
navigating these tough situations. I'm reading here something from Richard. It's always tough when leadership doesn't give the Scrum Master the opportunity to apply Agile principles because they don't get how it works. Wow. This is like every Scrum Master, Agile coach's life story when they enter into some kind of coaching agreement with an organization that's going through a transformation, and the leadership team doesn't have a lot of awareness of how Agile works. And I'm curious to know your thoughts and maybe some tips
yeah.
to help folks navigate this.
There are so many sort of like classics in here. Like you were just saying, this is the life story, right? It's kind of like, it's almost like we all have to, walk the same or similar path. And there is, just on a side note, there is some solace in the fact that it is a well-trod path, right? There's a lot of people out there to connect with and learn from, and have a support group with. Um, but the keywords in there that sort of came up for me were the management doesn't get it, right? I hear that all the
Mm,
time. Management
yes.
doesn't get it. And you know what? It's actually there's some truth in that we might not notice. If you find yourself saying about anybody, so and so doesn't get it, you're right. But maybe not in the way that you're thinking, right? So they don't get it. Very often in my experience, having done lots and lots of engagements as an external coach, I primarily sort of come in, do some work, leave, and then come back, do some more work. I'm sort of like the homework person. Here's some homework, I'll come back. Homework that they create, by the way. I don't mean that I give it out. So very often what I find is that the middle management never gets training, or doesn't get as much training, or doesn't get enough training. So they literally don't get it. And we might expect that, of course, they've been through training. And part of that is they sort of present themselves as already knowing it and having had training. But if you look under the hood, there's no training there, right? There is no basis for understanding. And you mentioned earlier empathy. And by the way, I forgot to acknowledge and thank you for sharing. You basically were like, actually, I might have had a little bit of a part in that I didn't realize at the time, right? So having some empathy there is obviously harder, right? I could tell. And empathy with somebody that says that they know, but they don't, that's hard too. So how can we find a path to that person to help them get the information that they don't have because they literally don't get it?
That's tough. That's definitely tough. And I'm seeing someone here that says, any good approaches for coaching people who don't think they need or want coaching? Coaching by stealth. Oh my goodness.
Ooh.
In my practice, just the nature of my practice, I always ask people if I have permission to coach them. And if I don't, we don't enter the coaching agreement because it's going to be extremely tough for me to help them reach their goals if I don't have their permission to coach them, right? And of course, as you mentioned earlier, there are other stances that sometimes we need to take where I have to be a teacher. For example, people watched my live where I teach them how to build their resume and the best practices around that. That is teaching. That is not coaching. But when people share with me a particular role and ask me, okay, I'm blocked. What do I do? And they need to feel vulnerable enough to have conversations with me. But I also acknowledge then that in an environment where you're working for an organization, and this is where it's tricky, the leadership team, you were brought in to create wins for the company. And part of the win is to coach people, be in a situation where you're coaching people who either don't think they need coaching or they do not want your coaching. In fact, what I'm going to say is, I was also part of that situation, Damon, in one of my contracts. I was hired by a particular Agile COE group, and I did not know this, but conversations were held with one part of the organization, the technology part, and there was agreement that yes, we need a coach, but there weren't any conversations with another part of the organization, which happens to be a business transformation part of the organization that actually is a key component of managing the changes on the project and had their own team, own people going through this. And they did not get their buy-in on bringing me in. And so here I am in a situation where I'm introduced to the scrum master on the team. And the person basically says, why are you here? I've got this. I don't want you coaching me. And my entire livelihood and job was basically determined and predicated on me making friends with this person. Otherwise, I'd end up sitting there and not being invited to meetings. So I am curious about your thoughts. If people were facing this situation, what would you advise them?
Well, I just want to back up to something you just said there and acknowledge that you said your entire, I'm paraphrasing it a little bit. I don't remember the exact words, but basically your future, your financial future depended on.
So many things depended
Right.
on.
So we'll just stop there for a moment. Your financial future depended on.
Yes.
Right. That's always tough. And that can, of course, we're all wonderful people and we're not going to let money, influence us, but it's hard not to, right? It's hard not to have that, like,
Absolutely.
hey, I got to pay my bills. You said, though, depends on me making friends with this person, right? So that could have gone a lot of different ways. Making friends with, adjacent to that is understanding the person. What are their needs and wants? What would they like from me? What can I give them? How can I help them understand what I need and what I'm all about? Right. So there's a whole bunch potentially packed into, what you were talking about there. I also want to distinguish between, what you were saying about an ongoing basis and what you were just saying in the role as Scrum Master, right? On an ongoing basis, you have the coaching agreements with people, and it's easier when you're working one-on-one with somebody for a long time.
Definitely.
And very often coaches and scrum masters say, well, I can't do that with all, I work with like 60 different people across 4 different teams, and I can't have a coach. But you can have a memory of what this person expects from you. And you can certainly have agreements with teams that cover a whole bunch of people. The other thing is you can actually do it on the fly. And I'm going to give you an example as well as show just a warning for our viewers. It may make you, it's not like a graphic advisory, but this may make you feel guilty. If you don't feel like potentially feeling guilty right now, you know, I don't know what to do. You know, please don't leave us. But so I know the first time I heard this, I felt guilty. And it's all in the area of permissioning. And I see there's a number of comments, people talking about permissioning. So the guilty part is, and you mentioned parts of it. I know other people are thinking this. Before I knew about this and was told about this, I would go in and coach without permission. I didn't realize I needed permission. I thought I had been granted authority. So all these people that are just, right? It was like, yeah, but I'm here because your boss has assigned me as your coach. So I don't know what to tell you, right?
Exactly.
But the way to think about it is, imagine you've just met somebody on the street, right? Or at work, or you've just met somebody, whatever venue you want to, next to each other at a baseball game or something. And you start up a conversation. What do you have permission to talk about or do? Can you hug them?
Absolutely not. I mean, you can't.
Right? I mean, I'm a hugger, but I know that not everybody is.
Imagine someone just coming at you.
Yeah, but I'm going to be tentative, right? So if I start to raise my hands like a hug is coming and the other person doesn't, then I'm like, okay, a hug's not coming, right? But, you know, that's a pretty obvious one, but that's the physical side. But, you know, what could you ask? Could you say something like, so I'm really curious, how are you planning to whatever they just talked about? Oh, why would I tell you that? That's probably a little bit too much. Or, you know, a very coachy kind of thing. So what might your future self say to you? My future self might warn me about you.
You're trying to take my job. I feel like you're trying to take my job. Oh my God.
Yeah, whatever it is, right?
Yeah, whatever the fear is.
So the typical things that a coach does, like ask powerful questions, look for accountability, inviting learning and growth, you know, trying to get specific goals, share observations, all of that kind of stuff, help people see blind spots. Like, do you really want a stranger saying, I think you might have a blind spot in this area?
I mean, absolutely not. If you haven't built the trust, I don't know you. So how dare you?
You just met them.
Exactly.
So there's no difference between that and you've been assigned by a person's manager to this person. From their perspective, you are a stranger.
And a threat.
And a threat. Yeah, sure. So the permissioning is very important, but it can be as simple as this. Hey, you know, I've come as a coach and I know you probably weren't expecting it, but I don't have an agenda. You know, I'm here to help you. You want me to write some user stories for you? Great. You want me to go to Dunkin' Donuts or, you know, whatever the donut place is, Tim Hortons, and get you some donuts? I'll go do it. Right. I'm here to help.
That many times.
I'm here to help. Right. Until you build that up and help people understand what it is you do and that they want it.
Absolutely. And I love what you just said here. I love how you provide these analogies and simplify things instead of throwing the lingo, which is wonderful. What I'm hearing is you're meeting the person where they're at, right? And this applies to anything, any type of relationship that you're building.
Wait, what?
Any type of relationship, Damon.
Yeah, you're right.
And you mentioned that analogy around, you know, going on the street and not rushing to hugging the person, assuming they're going to feel comfortable with you doing that. this applies to dating, right? You can imagine
I wasn't,
first date, I want
I
to
was
marry
careful.
you.
Right? Right. It's that's an experience. Well, maybe we haven't all had that experience, but that's an experience like, whoa, too close, right?
Yeah. And so the thing is, not everyone is gonna be as comfortable as you are. Not everyone's gonna go at a fast pace as you are. And I often see usually the people who struggle tend to have trouble putting themselves in the other person's shoes or trying to understand, their pace. Just because you're the kind of person who can easily open up or can take feedback, or feel vulnerable doesn't mean that the person's going to feel that way. Some people are more
Right.
introverted. And so it's important to do that in a gradual way. It kind of also applies to networking. When I have people coming to me and saying, oh my God, I send all these DMs on people on LinkedIn and to jump on an informational interview and I don't get a response. And I'm like, okay, can I see the line of DMs that you send them? What is it? How are you approaching this? Like literally from the onset of the connection request, can I pick your brain and can we get on a call? If I'm getting like and I'm truly, at that point where, when my posts go viral and my inbox is flooded with 100 people, I'm already feeling overwhelmed. And on top of that, the person has the expectation that I'm going to pick them and everyone else to jump on a call. Why should I pick you? And maybe I'm not the kind of person who loves getting on calls. Maybe I need to warm up to the idea. Maybe I need to exchange a few messages in DMs to be able to get there. So it's the same thing with coaching. You want that person to admit what they may be doing wrong from the first conversation that you have. The other thing that I picked up from what you just shared is you need to sort of be that person who is okay with not being ego driven. So I love, not that we expect Scrum Masters or Agile coaches to do this and go get donuts from Tim Hortons. But by the way,
I
Tim
would like
Hortons is in Toronto. But by the way, I did
what
that and
you
it's
you'll
a
notice
very
it says
effective tool.
Boston, Toronto here, right? So I'm bilingual. I can say Hortons or Dunkin' Donuts.
Yes, Dunkin' or Tim Hortons,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Not that we're encouraging people to go and be donut messengers. Oh,
But
by the way, this is a nice
whatever it is that you
bribery
could do to
tool,
help,
though.
right? Whatever it is you could do to help. It might not be
Exactly.
donuts.
Exactly. But it is an effective tool. I'll tell you that. My developers loved me whenever I showed up with a box of Timbits. But what we're trying to get at here is that, you know, set your ego aside. You're there to help. You got to do what the team needs. And if you really want to earn people's trust, you got to show up as someone who will help them versus constantly come across superior and know better. And I
Hmm.
got this from my consulting, world. When I was, raised in the consulting world to always show up, if I wanted to show up as a trusted advisor, I needed to show up as someone who always asked, how can I help? How can I help? Because
Hmm.
at the end of the day, I just want to help and make you feel good, make you feel safe, and help you succeed. And if it means that I'm going to go get a coffee for you, then I'll do it because that makes me happy seeing you smile. Right. And so I love that message. And so,
Well, it looks
Krispy
like
Kreme.
we left out Krispy Kreme. The donuts have totally distracted the
I
conversation.
know. I'm a donut lover, so I can't help it. As soon as you talked about donuts, I had to comment on that.
Well,
Um,
there is still, I think, a little bit of tail there to the whole, how do you coach somebody that's not coachable? And I want to go back to that, right? Very often, and you mentioned the ego too, and I'm not saying anybody out there has a big ego. I mean, I don't know, right? But it's different when you're the expert, and I like being an expert too. Oh, I know about this, and did you know about that? I mean, it's fun, right, to be the expert. But being an expert, then we're helping people when we're using our expertise to help them learn something or do something, right? So if our knowledge has helped, then that's where the value is. But in coaching, it's the exact opposite. the more that we've helped them figure things out on their own without our knowledge, the more successful we've been in the coaching. And I already mentioned, like, it's not one or the other, right? Agile Coach, for instance, whether you're doing Agile or not, you need the expertise for sure, but the coaching is a different thing. So, and then when it gets back to somebody that's uncoachable, part of it might be us, right? It's not that they're uncoachable. They just don't want to talk to us.
Or
It's
don't like
just
us.
simple
And
as
that's
that. They
okay
don't like
too.
us, whatever it is, right? They don't see it as I have to talk to you. My manager is forcing me. They may be hearing it as, through you, I'm hearing I'm broken. Through you, I'm hearing I'm incompetent. And I'm not. I don't see it that way, right? So it's not so much us personally. It could be like the whole concept of getting a coach, period.
Yeah. And sometimes we have to recognize as well, and this is another thing that I help my clients with in terms of determining some environments are just not the right fit for us, because coaching, as you had mentioned earlier, requires a connection, requires rapport. And it really, really, really depends on likability. It does. It's like if you were to work with a doctor, they're going to see things that other people are not going to see. And you need to be comfortable with that doctor. And it doesn't mean that they're not competent. It's just chemistry.
A couple of years back, I subluxated my shoulder. It's like dislocation, but not quite, but it's certainly painful. And my doctor was a wonderful doctor, but when it came to like explaining things, it was like he could see his lawyer like right next to him.
Oh dear.
And he wouldn't. I was like, "Oh, so should I operate?" He's like, "Well, it's up to you." And I'm like, I'm not a doctor. I don't know, right? But I was like, dude, do you just not understand? Like, as a person, it was cool, but as a doctor, I had a really hard time relating to him. So, anyway, back to this here. It could be the environment that's not right for us, or it could be one of the people that we're working with. This just doesn't make sense. We're not the right person for them. We're not going to be the right person for everybody. We're not everybody has their ears open and are ready right now. And if we sense somebody is not ready, we should leave them alone.
Yeah. And maybe success, it doesn't have to be all the way, right? Even if it's a slight and small improvement. And also because in the organizational world, it's not about the individual wins, it's about the team collectively winning to meet the organization goal. So as long as we're moving, the needle on that, then that is success. And there were engagements that I were part of where my idea of success was all the way to the end, but they were able to come a long way all the way to the middle. And then now that I look back, I tell myself, wow, they actually did come a long way compared to where they were. So sometimes we can get overly ambitious and push the team too far or push the organization too far when they're not ready. So this is really amazing. I actually just thought of a question that is extremely important, and I want to make sure that we answer it, because I feel that in this day and age, especially with the pandemic and everything that people have gone through, there is this burnout. And I see that in coaches. I see a lot of coaches who get burnt out. And from my perspective, in my opinion, working with more than 100 people, a big part of it is I see coaches who fall into the trap of the savior trap. And so, do you have any tips to help people protect their energy and ensure, especially coaches, and ensure that they don't get burnt out? Whether it's scrum masters, agile coaches, leaders in organizations where they're in a position where they have to be servant leaders and protect people, that can easily put them in a position where they feel they can't even take a day off because the whole sky is going to fall.
It might.
Yeah.
It might. But, there's a couple of things, there's definitely some classics in this area as well. And one, it's kind of like, I'm going to say it, and it might be like, at the airport, you don't hear it anymore. Bah, 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 if somebody gives you a package, bah. But they're actually, airplanes again, there's that thing that people always say, like, it's like when, the air comes down and they say, put it over your mouth first before you, give the mask to the next person. We can't help people if we're not healthy and whole to help them. We're not going to give our best help if we're in need, right? So if we're, needing a vacation or working too hard, how are we going to, as a coach, you're not successful in your own work. You're successful as you help others, right? We're really coaching is really a care profession. And the person that usually doesn't get the care that needs it is us. So you have to do that.
That's great advice. Beautiful. So we have 15 minutes left, and I want to make sure that we answer all of your questions. So if we haven't, or if we've missed it, maybe you put it up there and we missed it, I invite you to copy and paste it or write it up again. Or if you just thought of something else, then I invite you to ask. I'm seeing here a question, which I quickly answered in the chat, but I want to elaborate on it. I'm hearing a question around, if an environment is not a good fit, what do you advise to do? And I'm going to provide my perspective, and Damon, you can, provide your perspective as well. My general advice when people say that, my first question usually is, if you feel that it's not a good fit, what is keeping you there? And when we dig through those answers, the person comes to the realization, it could be, I'm scared, the grass is not greener. And then we work on, okay, let us see how we can improve your chances and create more opportunities for you so that you don't feel stuck in a situation that's not serving you, because that is disempowering. Or it could just be that maybe we need to make adjustments, because if this is a pattern that keeps happening, then maybe there are things that we need to do differently. So it's a bit of a complex question, and usually, I answer that in a coaching call. But what I'm going to say is, if there are very definitive red flags, like toxic environment, you're being disrespected, this is not like, gray, this is like a black and white thing, then you gotta understand that, you gotta advocate for yourself. And I never recommend for anyone to stay in a situation that's not serving them. And please get the support that you need to empower you to leave that situation, because it's not healthy.
So I'm going to give a slightly different answer, but I want to give the context, right? So if you go back to what I was saying about work, specific to coaching, and I know you're not working with just coaches, right? So this is specific to coaching, Scrum Masters, RTEs, Agile coaches, anybody that has coaching as a big part of their job. We're there to help others, and the people that need the most help are the ones that are in the not so great environments. Now, I'm not suggesting you go into a toxic environment. You're going to know as a person that is caring for others how much you can take, right? I'm never going to be a fireman. And even if I somehow became a fireman, I am never going to be on the bomb squad. And even if I was going to be on the bomb squad, I would never be parachuting into, behind enemy lines in a live fireplace, right? So we each know, well, those are interesting examples I came up with, but we each know how much we can take. But the thing is, when it comes to, for instance, coaching, it's where the problems are, where we're needed the most, right? So it's just a question. Ask yourself, am I a firefighter? Am I in the bomb squad?
Yes,
Or
that's
something
a great
lower. I
analogy.
can't think of, something lower than a fireman there in my example, but what's right for you. And keep in mind that part of going in there is to improve the environment, like specific to coaching. So it's, I'm not saying run into a burning building or a toxic environment. I remember very, very vividly as an Agile coach going into an environment that was, toxic, but doable. And another one, I was there for 1 hour and I would never step foot in the building again, ever, for any reason.
Yeah, I love that. So know your boundaries and limits, and understand that part of the job is to solve problems, especially people problems. So if the expectation is that it's going to be a cakewalk, and you don't enjoy confrontation, or you don't enjoy, dealing with some resistance, then maybe you want to reconsider if coaching is for you. um, Maybe you want to work on it. There are many things that you want to think about. Kind of hard to just give a cookie cutter answer for that. But at the same time, as I'm hearing from you, Damon, again and again, is know your boundaries,
Know
because
your boundaries.
at the end of the day, you have to enjoy this. Because if you are dreading waking up in the morning and showing up, and in your mind is like, yeah, but I want to be a coach, but I want to be a coach, at the end of the day, sure, like it's great to help people, but you also have to enjoy the process of doing that. Wonderful. Is there a metric for how successful a coach is? I'm going to
No.
pass that one to you. I'll just give you all the hard questions.
There is no single metric, but what I've learned over time is, yes, there is a metric. And it's actually, while there's no single metric, there's always a simple metric. Whoever brought you in the door, ask them.
Yes.
Right? It's like any other thing. The hiring manager is the person that is going to determine stay or go. Right? So that's the simplest metric, stay or go. Ask that person. Don't say, hey, under what circumstances will you fire me? That's kind of like, I want to know so I can, come right up against the edge. No, let's just have a conversation with the person. Help me understand what you're looking for. How will you judge my success? And they might not know. Well, hey, that's what you're here for. So then have a conversation. Here are some things that might make sense. And they're going to, one of those things is going to appeal to them. Right. Or you realize, I don't know why I'm here and they don't either. We're going to have to continue to work on it. But sort of in general, it's hard because we all know that we've worked on or with a team that was amazing, but their results never saw the light of day. So you can't say it's based on the results of the organization or the results of the team. It may be you've got an amazing coach in an environment that just nobody could budge. So it's really hard. And I think the best place to start is with the person that brought you in the door.
Absolutely. And their goals can change and shift. So this is why it makes it extremely complicated. So if I were to draw that to my own world as a coach, how I measure my success in every engagement is asking the client what their goal is. My success isn't just going to be, oh, if you don't get a job working with me, then I'm not successful and you're not successful. That's ridiculous. I work with people who sometimes end up getting more clarity and realize, you know what, I actually love my job. I want to stay. And I'm like, I am so happy. This is a successful coaching engagement. You got clarity. You feel happy. You want to stay. This is great. And it's really the journey and the learning that happens is what really matters the most. So when I work with a client who initially wasn't sure if this is the right role for them, and in the journey, they evolve, they build confidence, they become better communicators, and then they look back and they realize, you know what? I actually love my job. Excellent. So it really, like you mentioned, depends on the goal of the person that you're having the coaching agreement with. And you can come up with KPIs and success metrics, or what I call a North Star, to determine, how do we know that you're successful? That is something that coaches and coachees set together. So for example, I don't know, like if, and I'm going to pull my product management hat here. If you're working with an organization that wants to acquire more customers, and at the end of the day, the product that's being built ends up acquiring more customers, then we know that we're successful. So there's a lot of these vanity metrics that people are obsessed about. And at the end of the day, it's a combination of the goal that you want to achieve and the value that you create, versus fixating on how many daily scrums did we have and how many retrospectives that we had, that kind of thing. So it is a little bit of a complex question, Naomi, but hopefully what you got out of it is trying to meet the person where they're at, and at the end of the day, it's how they feel at the end of the engagement is what makes you a successful coach. Okay, we got 5 minutes. There is one more question left, which is how do you coach up
Yeah.
someone who's more senior?
You know what's funny about that question is I don't remember where it came from, but I remember that coming up before, whether it was a conversation with you or on the
Yeah, I
LinkedIn
think
post.
that was one of the things on my post, and a little bit of our conversation for this session.
Oh, okay.
It is a common thing that people face in terms of not knowing how to coach someone who's more senior, has more authority, maybe even paying their salary. Like,
Mm.
how do you navigate coaching them up?
Well, I think it comes back to the definition of the word coach. Often when and I'm not chastising or anything here, just observing. Uh, Often, not necessarily this case, when we say coaching up, what we really mean is this person is doing something that is not meeting my expectation, right? Either annoying me, or it's getting in my way, or there's something that I wish they knew, some knowledge I wish they had, or a direction I wish they would take. And so that's more a desire from our perspective, and we could look at that as potentially mentoring or
Mm.
providing feedback or information, but something information flowing in this direction, which, let's face it, often it's a one-way street, right? There is no open door. So that can often indicate the person higher in the org chart. It's not an open door. They don't really listen. They might listen like, yes, we're on that, or that's not a problem, or that's not you don't need to worry about that. So there's a couple of different things in there. It could be just the person's not a good listener. So I don't know how you're gonna, necessarily deal with that. I don't know that there's a
Magical wand.
simple, yeah, there's a magical wand. That's more of an over time kind of a thing, and
Building the
realize,
relationship
it's an
and
over
empathy.
time.
Yeah.
Sometimes, I've just left. I'm like, okay, this is never going to get there. It's an ongoing issue. That's not for me, right? But in other cases, I've had great success. I would call it actually managing up. Part of it is managing up. There were some things that I knew that the person didn't know, and I just found opportunities. Say, oh, hey, when I was doing this, this happened. And they might be like, that's very mysterious. That doesn't make any sense to me. How did that work? That
And
never would
that's
have worked
where
for me.
you talked earlier about bringing the awareness. So maybe they
Yeah.
just weren't aware.
Yeah. Awareness, and just constant awareness. And then I remember, like, a year later on a particular topic, the person was saying to somebody else, here's something to consider. This might work. And I thought, oh, it only took a year.
And
Oh, there
this
it
is
is.
when I have conversations with people sometimes, and when they're straying from what they said to me that they wanted to do or achieve or whatever without knowing, I'll often remind them and say, you said to me that you wanted this to happen, but you're acting in this way that doesn't support it. And sometimes you can say it a nice way to someone who's a leader, and they'll realize, oh, you know what, you're right, I had no idea, because they don't have visibility on what happens on the ground. And sometimes it's just a matter of making that visible and helping them realize that it doesn't support their goals and the enterprise goals, and then they'll just back off. Just helping them understand the impact, I think, is definitely very important.
Just one more quick thing. The other part of that, though, is, if you take those two people out of that environment, just some random place where it's not really boss and,
Mhm.
employee anymore, we as people often value the perspectives of another person, or just say, hey, I was running into this. I wonder what's your thought? Something unrelated to work. What we can do is work on creating a relationship where they see us as a person that's interesting to just talk to, period. And they bring things to us, right? And they actually want to hear back because they realize we're one of those rare people that actually listens. Oh, that was a little bit more strident than I thought it was going to be, right? So we can build up that relationship so that we can have a coaching relationship with them and explain to them, hey, this is something that I do. Not necessarily go all the way into coaching, but use a lot of those coaching skills like
Mm.
awareness, listening, emotional intelligence, being present, asking insightful, maybe not questions that require permission, like a powerful question, but at least insightful questions or open questions. And then that could be considered coaching that just happens to be up.
Absolutely. That's wonderful, wonderful advice. All right. So we are at time. Actually, we're a minute over time, which is
Oh,
great
no.
because it means that people have stayed. We got like literally 38 people at this point live, and 39 actually, which is amazing. It's pretty much the same number or around the same number since we started, which means people
Amazing.
enjoyed this conversation and got a lot of value. I'm so excited and happy. And so I wanted to thank you, Damon, for being here and sharing your wisdom as someone who guides, other coaches and helps them navigate these difficult situations. I'm wondering, how can people reach out to you if they were
Sure.
interested to work with you? Can you share that with us? And I'm definitely going to also, share any links as well in the post. What's the best way that people can get in touch with you and learn about what you do?
Absolutely. Well, you already recommended the book, which, for $20 for an ebook is great, right? So
It's like a bargain, I'm telling
yeah,
you, everyone.
most of my coaching knowledge is already in there, but of course it's a book. LinkedIn is a good way to reach out. Just feel free. I'm an open connector on LinkedIn. I'll connect with, well, not anybody, but any reasonable person.
People who are coachable, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's
I don't want that Agile Shrek person, whoever that was I saw in the chat there. Another good way is my website, which has a lot of vowels in it, but it's Facilitivity, facilitivity.com. There's a lot of great stuff there. A whole bunch of coaching programs, but maybe LinkedIn is the best way to just connect, and you can get to everywhere from there.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Damon. And for those of you who are still here, this is an episode that is part of the Career Transition podcast. So maybe you're going to be watching this as a replay, or maybe you're going to be tuning in into the Apple podcast or Spotify. There's going to be a lot more of these coming. And if there is someone that you absolutely love that you want me to interview in this podcast, please recommend them and let me know so that I can reach out to them and bring you more value. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. And I hope you have an amazing rest of your Friday.
Thank you.